Hi everybody, I am Sarah Cray and I teach watercolor, and today we are doing our project that is titled Sunrise Impression. We have Michael here working the cameras.
Hello, everybody.
And we're married, so sometimes I call him dear and things like that. It's fine. So this painting is actually based off of a painting done by Monet called Impression Sunrise, and it is extremely important to the art world and all of this really fun stuff. So I'm super excited to dive into this project, give you some art history, and show you how you can recreate this masterpiece, which is kind of cool. Okay, so in this project, we will be doing 4 steps. So our very first step is we will be doing the wash, the multicolored wash across our entire paper. Our second step is we will put in our harbor. Our third step is we will do the foreground by putting in our boats and some water texture lines. And the fourth step is just sun and any finishing details. I am using 4 brushes. These are my go-to brushes. Around 2, around 6, around 12, and a 1-inch wash. Now, please don't let not having these exact brushes stop you from painting this project. I am a huge proponent of use what you have and make do with it, and it will work out. So don't stress. Use what you have. I also am using 2 Neocolors here, and these Neocolors are essentially crayons. They're wax water-soluble crayons, so they're super fun to play with and add texture and add lines. And I love introducing you to these kind of new products that you can add to your arsenal to bring to your thing. I didn't come up with that. I
Love
think
it.
Jesse did. And we are using 4 paint colors. We are using lemon yellow, red, sea blue, and space blue. So all of these supplies come in the Let's Make Art History Volume 3 watercolor box. So if you want to paint these projects and just get all the supplies that you need with it, just order the box. It makes it easy for you. Okay, so we do not have an outline with this project. I wanted this to be very free, and I know that that feels very scary, but the more that you guys take the time to do the scary things, like paint things without an outline or, try new things, that's actually where we learn the most. So we got our supplies. I taped my paper down. Let's do our oath, and then we'll get into it.
Hold on, let me get my bell. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, ready? If
Raise your right hand.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
Thank you very much. And I just want to take a second and say that I'm just thrilled to be here. That's so great. Thank you for being here and for taking the time to paint and learn something. It's just so cool. You're really cool. So thanks for being here.
I'm pretending that you're talking to me, and you're welcome.
Okay, so for our very first step, what we're going to do is we are going to create a multicolored background wash. Now, this is a great practice because whenever we're trying to recreate, especially like a landscape or another painting, we want to think about and like see through it to see how to break it down. And so what I mean by that is when we look at this painting here, I'm going to look through the harbor and the boats and the sun rays, and I'm just going to see what is behind for this wash as I'm doing this. I see some warmth, some peachiness up here, and then it turns to kind of like a blue, and then it goes back to the peachiness a little bit at the bottom. Now, what's interesting is I got another art book that had this same painting in it, and look how different the colors are in this one.
Whoa.
Which at first I was like, dang it, I didn't know that it was so purpley. But then I realized that that's okay. It's okay that we actually have different experiences with the different reference photos. It's just all practice and it's all learning. So that just gives me permission to have more freedom when I'm experimenting with different color washes because it's fine. So here you can see there's like this peachy warmth at the top, and then it turns to like this blue, hints of purple within, and then it lightens up to almost this kind of muddy green down here with the orange and the sun reflection. Now, all of that is to say this is a muddy painting, okay? Look at how the layers and the colors mix together to create such muddiness. Really, the only pure color is this sun. Everything else is kind of like mixed to these different tones. That is to say, I want you to make muddy colors. Okay, so let's do it. So I'm going to start by wetting my entire paper, just using my 1-inch wash or whatever larger brush that you have. Now, this painting is a big deal because this is essentially how the art movement, Impressionism, got its name from the title of this painting itself. Monet is the one who painted it, and he was born in
France.
1840 in
Oh.
France. That's right. Um, and we have actually talked about Monet before when we recreated the water lilies painting, and I go a little bit through his uh, journey as an artist, and we'll talk about that again here too. Okay, so after I wet the paper, I'm going to do like 1 or 2 layers because I'm going to mix some colors on my palette, and I want to make sure that for the most part my painting stays wet. So sometimes just doing an extra layer of water will make sure that I have a nice wet paper. Now I want to say that whenever you put water to paper, it's going to buckle. That's why I tape my pages down, but even with it taped down, it starts to warp. That's the nature of watercolor paper. There are some people who will stretch their paper. I'm not into that.
Not that hardcore.
I'm not that hardcore of an artist. There's many ways that you can do it. That will help with buckling. Okay, so let's just start putting in colors. So along the top, we have like this orange peachiness, and I'm going to use my round 12, and I'm just going to start dropping it in.
I have observations while you're painting.
Okay.
I don't know who you tell people is your favorite artist, but I've been to a lot of art museums with you,
Mm-hmm.
and you get a very specific look on your face when you see a Monet in real life. I think he's your secret favorite.
Oh, it's no secret.
Monet's your favorite?
He's my favorite. He is my favorite. And um, I love, but there's so many good ones. So I don't want to say, I don't know. Hold on. Let's color mix, then we'll talk more
Okay,
about these
okay.
movements. So I'm going to I mixed together my yellow and my red to do this like peachy. I did like hints of yellow. I'm going to mix some of my space blue and my red together to get a little bit of a purpley color. And then let's take some of this sea blue and space blue. So I'm just mixing different blues and purples and greens on my palette. So different variations. And then I'm just going to start layering them. And again, we want this to be muddy. So if the yellow and the blue mix to make a green, that's fine. That's just fine. Now I'm going to start putting in some purple. And again, I'm kind of just trying to see through all of the details in the texture and just looking at the colors underneath. And I'm going to do multiple layers of this wash actually, because this is such a light value. Like you see how light this is kind of diffusing out and all the colors are kind of lightening up. So I'm going to do a couple layers just to like eliminate some of that brightness. And if you want to switch to your 1-inch wash, go for it. The benefit of using a 1-inch wash when putting down paint is you can cover just a larger area. So that's like my first initial. And actually, let's introduce a little bit more of this yellow orange to the bottom here, which is going to kind of turn it green, but that's fine because that's actually what we see in the painting. And then I'm basically going to do that same color wash one more time. Now you might be asking, Sarah, why was this painting so important? Why was it a big deal? What's the deal here? All of that stuff. Well, up until this time, especially in France, the style of painting was definitely more about realism and like neoclassicism, which is focusing on mythology, Bible stories, and the last one is historical paintings. That's what the art world wanted to see. That's what people expected when it came to fine art. And for artists, if you want to make money, you essentially had to apply to these like fine art academies so you can get into shows and you can show your work, and then people would buy your work, and that's how you get a reputation and all of that kind of stuff. So if you go to any of these fine art shows, you're expecting to see very realistic paintings that are depicting biblical, historical, all of that kind of stuff, mythological paintings. And they were way more realistic and detailed, right? And what Monet wanted to do is he wanted to capture the impression of something right then. So it had to do with plein air. That means you're painting right there outside. You're usually trying to capture light and you're not blending colors. You're layering the paint colors on top of each other to communicate a gestural or impression of that moment in time right there, which was so new at that time, like such a new concept and one that was not accepted. I mean, the criticism of this, and I wrote down the quote because I thought it was hilarious. A critic said about this painting specifically that wallpaper in its early stages is much more finished than that. They did not like this. And actually, it got Impressionism itself, the movement got its name from a journalist who just said, oh, it's just an impression. And they were using it
Derogatory.
They were, I mean, it was not okay. But there were these Impressionist artists, Monet being one of them, and a few others. And I wrote their name down too. Manet, Monet, Renoir, Pissarro, Degas, and Cézanne. They didn't care. So they put out their artwork. Critics hated it. They made fun of it. Nobody wanted to buy it. And they said, I don't care. I like it. And I'm going to keep doing it. And that is so like punk rock. Like Impressionism was like the punk rock of the art world.
I'm just imagining old man Monet with a mohawk. Just punk rock.
So much so that, Monet's doing these paintings. He's got to make money somehow. He's not making any money. He decides to do an auction. And he puts out this auction, and people are so mad about it that they start protesting at the auction that the police have to come and tell people to calm down. And so I just have to take a moment and laugh at that. Like, haters are going to hate no matter what. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just the sheer fact that there were people that were like protesting at an art show at an auction because they really hated this like art. It's just funny. Okay, that was step one. We're going to let that dry for a second, and then we'll move on to step two, where we will be doing our harbor. Now, I just want to call attention to, we have different colors going on here. You can see we have muddiness. And this even, like, you can even take this deeper. If you wanted to do one more layer, you could probably get away with that. I'm going to leave this here for now, and that's mostly because we are going to use turquoise to do our harbor. And this is not a super dark value color. And I want it to stand out from the background. So I'm going to leave this here. I want to call attention to the fact that if you do a much darker background, when you go to do the turquoise, if the value is too dark, you're not going to be able to see the turquoise on top of it. So just keep that in mind. Okay. While we're letting that dry, I just wanted to show you a couple paintings that I really liked from Monet. I mean, I will always say this, that if you guys need inspiration of what to paint and you're kind of tired of consuming, go to your local library, because libraries are the best and they are community care, and I will support libraries forever and ever. And check out art books from masters, anyone that speaks to you, maybe one that you've never even heard of, and just take the time to flip through it, and it's going to blow your mind. Like I was flipping through these books and taking notes in preparation for these tutorials, and I had the best time. Like, look how beautiful.
Wow.
Look at that. And what's amazing is, like, there are no hard lines here. It's just like movement and color and layering of paint strokes on top of each other to create this scene. But you can tell that it's a scene. It's just beautiful. And there was a portrait he did. Actually, Monet was a caricaturist. Caricaturist? Is that the right word? He did like cartoon-like characters.
Caricature?
Caricaturists.
I don't know.
In his youth, he was very talented. That's actually how he started making money originally. And he did this painting later when he was kind of more in his Impressionism style that I just
Oh my gosh.
love.
It's so beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful? And I'm going to put this in the, if you can see that close up, can you?
Hmm.
Look at the movement of the brushstrokes. And what I find amazing is the fact that brushstrokes, depending on their angle, can give you a hint of the actual form. Notice how on the forehead they're straight up and down, but then when they get to the cheek, they round out. The same way that if you were to touch a cheek, how it kind of rounds and you have this kind of apple of your cheek right here. Just beautiful. And then there's another one I wanted to show you because I love how color can give a feeling to a painting and give it like a whole new story. So here is a winter scene,
Wow.
which is just like, if that doesn't communicate the starkness of winter, well, I probably wouldn't understand the scene until I went to Missouri. And then I'm like, oh, I
That's
know
right.
exactly what that feels like.
That feels like I'm staying inside. That's what it feels like.
Exactly. But then look at this one.
Wow.
Look at how rich and vibrant that is.
I had no idea. I only thought Monet did pond paintings.
Oh, no. I mean, that was definitely his obsession near the end of his life. But when you look at these masters, I mean, it's so easy to think, oh, they're known for water lilies, so that's the only thing that they painted. I mean, these masters painted their essentially their entire lives, finding their themselves and their style and experimenting and trying new things. And this is why they are known as the father of Impressionism because they were willing to do something different than what was happening then. And most of the time, whenever that happens, people don't like it. People don't like change. And that's okay. It's really brave to do something different. And in the moment, you're always going to get criticism for it. People are going to hate it because it's new. But if it resonates with you and you keep doing it, in hindsight, we can look and say, that is when something changed. And so I'm saying that to you. It's okay to be different and try something new. And people are going to have an issue with it. I know that. I've experienced that myself. And you just got to keep going with what you think is the right thing. That's it. So beautiful. But you can always tell that he had a real love for light. I mean, and I think that's what's really interesting about Impressionism in general is the subject matter actually became about light as well. Um, and just trying to capture that moment is really cool.
Impressionism reminds me of photography a lot. I feel like they have a lot of the same roots.
Impressionism does?
Yeah, just of like
Interesting.
not the actual look, but the process of,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yes.
just capturing that moment, trying to like, I don't know.
Yes. Okay. This is mostly dry. Let's see what it's like if we try and put in our harbor. Now, if you want to try like messing with this, if this is your first experience with the Neocolor and you want to play with it beforehand, go ahead on a scratch piece of paper. There's many ways that you can use a Neocolor. You can draw directly onto your paper. Just let it dry. You can take and dip it into the water and do it that way. And it's going to go much smoother once it's wet. Or you can apply it dry and then take a damp brush and blend it out. Or you can try and draw into a wet area. Now I'm going to move back to my painting, the sunrise painting.
I can't get over the idea of a water-soluble wax. There are some chemists hard at work at that company.
You're like, wait a second.
How do they do that?
Hold on, I got to find my... So one thing that I'm going to do before I continue on with my harbor is I'm going to kind of mark where my sun is. So I'm going to put it, if you look at the painting itself, it's on the right-hand side. Do this one because it's smaller. Right-hand side about a third of the way up. So I'm going to go right-hand side about a third of the way up. I'm going to do it in a lightest value here. And I'll go back and add more to that later, but I'm just kind of marking it. You had, I didn't say this when we did the wash, you could have painted around the sun, but after I did that, I realized that like, it's really hard to paint around a tiny circle when you're doing these loose washes, and I don't think that it actually lent itself to the painting, so I didn't do it in this tutorial. Okay, so I'm just going to loosely recreate this harbor. So it's kind of like a little above halfway. and it's just these horizontal marks. So I'm just going to take the side of my Neocolor and put them in, and then I'm just going to look at the general shapes and angles. So this is very loose and sketchy. I mean, that's the point of Impressionism, so please don't get caught up on the details. And I'm going to say, okay, so we have some vertical lines going this way with, I don't know if those are sails. I don't know if that is smoke. I'm assuming it's sails because this is a harbor, but I don't know. And then over here, we have some that are kind of angled this way. I'm not entirely sure what those are, but that's okay. I don't need to know. And I'm just going to recreate that. So just kind of putting in some vertical lines this way and doing some scribbles across, kind of mimicking that sail shape. We have some masts maybe?
I think you're nailing it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
But that kind of looks like a cross, so maybe I'll do another one at the top here. There we go. And then kind of on this edge, this is kind of angled here. Now, another like sign of Impressionism is not, I mean, we talked about the short brushstrokes that are layered. We talk about the depiction of light, how it's trying to paint right in the moment. Another one is open composition. And what that idea is and what that means. And I'm just going to keep kind of sketching and drawing here, kind of following the shapes that I see or making new ones up. Who cares, you know? So close composition is essentially when the subject is kind of more like central to the painting, and it's almost like very clear that everything around it is leading your eye to the subject in the painting. An open composition is where the subject is not necessarily super obvious, and the painting it's painted in a way where you can tell that the scene continues on. Like it's almost like you're just doing this to something, where a closed composition is just like everything is kind of pointing towards that subject. So it's not necessarily that there is, how do I say this? Like the environment around it is all trying to point to the subject. Open is not that. It just kind of keeps going as if this frame wasn't here, if that makes sense.
Can you do this again? I want you all to know in Sarah land that Sarah does this everywhere we go. We will be out to dinner. We'll be going to the movies. It doesn't matter. She'll like stop randomly and do that finger shape all the time.
And Michael will be like, what are you doing? And then sometimes it's like, I'm just trying to see color of something, or like, it's like just kind of trying to see a moment by itself, because the world is overwhelming. There's so much information. And the more you paint, the more you recognize how these other elements actually affect what we see. And so if you really want to see something for what it is, you have to block everything out. And I do that all the time where I'm like, I used to use really strong blue painter's tape. And then when I was choosing colors, I would have to like block the blue painter's tape out because it was affecting how I saw the colors within my painting. And that's true if you're trying to see a sunrise and like there's just too much activity here, it's blocking. You got to like separate it. So I use my hand. Wouldn't that be funny if I was just like mad at someone and I was just like
Blocked him.
blocking them off? You're like, Sarah, what's wrong? And I'm like,
Can't even.
can't right now. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of space blue along my harbor line. So I put in my Neocolors kind of loosely. I'm going to take my round 6. I'm going to grab some space blue, and I'm just going to put in a little bit of a darker color. You can blend out what's there. You can just kind of leave it and paint on top of it. Remember, we're going for an impression here. We're going for sketchy and quick and loose. We're trying to capture just this moment. So allow it to be free.
I've got an idea of what the right-hand side spikes are.
Yeah?
I think they are like little cranes to get boxes off of ships.
Oh, that would make sense.
I based that off of nothing.
They look like cranes. They're kind of angled that way.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to do some rough texture here because if you look in our painting, it's not a thin line. You see how it's nice and thick right there? And then it kind of continues up more. So there's so many different kind of lines. There's even reflections here of the boat. So I'm just gonna take my space blue and kind of thicken some of these areas. Maybe put in some reflections here. What I love about this month's box is the 3 projects, and I put them in order this way. Follow the art history movements. So here we start with Impressionism, and then we move on to Post Impressionism with Van Gogh. And then after that, we have Picasso, and we're going to paint Expressionism. Is the guitar player, but he is actually known for Cubism, which is like right after Expressionism. So it actually like follows the history line very nicely.
I, in one of our first museum trips, accidentally called it cubalism. And we laugh about it to this day. And I
Yeah.
could see that you almost accidentally called it cubalism because we jokingly call it that all the time.
I know. I had to like pause for a second and be like, wait, is that the right one?
Cubalism.
Okay. So now we have our loose harbor in there. That's step 2. And now we're going to do step 3, where we're going to start to put in the texture of the water and the foreground boats. Now the foreground boats are important to this composition because they give us the understanding of the perspective of this painting. And the other thing is, like, in your mind, you might be thinking, how can I paint a boat silhouette with people in it? That's so overwhelming. The biggest thing when you are trying to recreate a painting or a photograph is do not listen to your brain. Your brain is going to tell you a person, a silhouette, a boat. In your brain, you see details. You see all of the nuances of those things, and then it becomes overwhelming. Instead, you're going to try to look at paintings and photographs and the world as if you have no context to what it is. And when you do that, you are able to see things for what they actually are. You can just decipher shapes and color and line. And then all of the context of those things go out the window. So then it makes it so much easier to recreate and just see what's in front of you instead of thinking, oh gosh, a boat detail. How do I do that? So when we look at our boat here, this is a rectangle with a blob and a longer, skinnier blob. That's it.
I see what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So try and like tell your mind, thank you so much, brain, for being so wonderful. Don't need you right now. I'm going to look and just see what my eyes see and not what my brain tells me my eyes see. Okay? If you want to kind of like lightly sketch at first with your Neocolor, that's totally fine. I'm going to put it, this is essentially kind of right in the middle here. And you can see that from my washes, my painting kind of started to warp. I'm getting a peak and a valley. So this is kind of bumping up. And it's not the end of the world. It's just kind of annoying to paint on. So I'm going to move it. Let's put it kind of like here. Kind of a rectangle shape.
Can you scoot your head back a smidge?
Yes.
There we go.
Just kind of a rectangle shape here. It's about 1 inch long. And then there's kind of a roundish blob here. Long skinny blob there.
That's me and you fishing.
Yes, that's right. And then we have another boat over here. And let me look at the shape of this close up. It's pretty much the same thing, not as tall. Okay. And then if you want to go ahead and grab your orange Neocolor, I'm going to start putting in some of this reflection here. So just kind of using horizontal, just thin and quick brush strokes, giving that impression of that sun reflecting.
That's the peaks of all the little ripples of the water, right? That's what we're looking at.
Yes, so it's just that sun reflection on the water. And because we have no outline, our compositions are all going to feel a little bit different. Your boat placement is going to be different than mine. Your harbor placement is going to be different than mine. That's okay. And then let's move to our round 6. And I'm going to mix a dark value. I want it to be darker. It's going to be like the most dark value on our painting. So I'm going to take space blue. I'm going to take some red. Let's see what happens when we add a tiny bit of yellow in there. That's going to desaturate the purple. And do a couple layers of that. Couple swoops, I guess, of that same kind of color mixture. Okay. And then taking my round 6, kind of following my sketch. And then a taller person here. And then I'm going to take my 2, because there's like the littlest hint of an oar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just going to do the thinnest hint of a line going that way. Let's actually make that stick out more. There we go. And then there's reflections, right? So, like so. Now, part of me, as this has dried, I can tell that my painting, like background, is a little bit lighter in value than maybe I wanted. But know that with this type of painting, there's nothing wrong with, like, if you wanted to go back in and just be like, darker. You can. And this is what I love about, I don't know, Impressionism and painting, and really just knowing that we're painting things to experiment and try new things, is you can always just go back in and adjust and add, and it's not like the end of the world, you know?
So, my artistic reference is I usually try to make either music analogies in my head or photography ones because those are the
Mm-hmm.
things I like to do. And what you're doing right now to me looks like adding a vignette, which I do in a lot of my photos to kind of frame the center. Do you
Mm-hmm.
do that painting ever?
I do. I am a huge, whenever I do landscapes, I love doing a vignette. I love darkening all the edges because it really like brings the viewer's eye to the center. Although if you were to look at the landscape that I'm referencing, there's usually not a vignette. So like that's a stylistic choice that I make personally
Hmm.
because I really like that. The reason why I'm not going totally in the center is because I do not want to mess up my boat.
Right,
If my boat wasn't in there, then I would do it across the entire thing.
right.
But yeah,
You vignette on purpose?
I like
Was
to
the question.
vignette on purpose, personally.
Me too.
Yeah.
You buy expensive lenses to get camera lenses to get rid of the vignette,
Uh-huh.
and then I just go ahead and add it right back in post because I
Oh,
love how
really?
it looks. Yeah.
Now, before we do our water reflections, which I want to let that dry for a second because my foreground is now wet for me and doing that other layer. I can add a little bit more up here. You can see that maybe my, like right above here, I like the color that I got up here. This maybe got a little bit too light in value. Should I blend it out?
Yeah,
Okay,
do it.
while we're waiting. I can do like, it's kind of like right as at daybreak. You know how it's kind of like this leftover darker clouds?
Yeah, haze.
Yeah. So let's put
Yeah.
that in. And I'm blending out, I mean, you can see with the Neocolors how beautifully they blend out. My right side, that texture has kind of disappeared, but that's okay because it really only took me about 10 seconds to put in, and I can just layer on top of it.
Again, any of you in Llama Land, please, if you have any knowledge about water soluble wax, tell me about it in the comments.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, think of a candle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that would never melt in a boiling water pan and like dissolve into it.
Yeah.
Incredible.
My purple maybe got a little bit too strong. Okay. All right. Now, while we let that dry, let's put in our foreground brush marks. So like that hint of water here, those waves. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So taking that same kind of darker blue that we mixed, I'm just going to start doing. Now in the foreground here, they get thicker, and then as they kind of work their way back, they get a little bit smaller, but they don't go all the way back. They kind of just go to the boat scenes and then kind of even out. So I can see that my paper is wet here.
I mean, I hope he's not listening, but I like yours better than Monet's.
Please.
Don't haunt me, Monet.
I mean, if you guys have a chance to see, he has so many paintings in museums and stuff like that. But one of my favorite museums is the Léongerie in France, and that's where it's just these rooms, these oval rooms, and the painting is on the one wall, and it's just huge and long, and
It's a whole giant room.
yeah, it is stunning. And the reason why I really like that is because I can get overwhelmed at museums. There's so much to see that you get sensory overload because it's like another one, another one, another one. You know what I mean? And I loved that experience of having like this is one painting and there's just chairs in the middle and you can just sit and look at the different sections of the one painting and just like be totally immersed in it. So it was easier for me to stay like focused in that, where other museums after like one floor, I'm like, I'm tired.
Yeah,
You know,
drained.
you're just kind of drained.
It's interesting because, like, you see Monets in pictures, and a picture fits in a book or in whatever, and so they're all small. But the missing factor of having seen them in person is they're giant.
Yeah.
Not only are they beautiful, but like there's this other whole thing, which is their size.
Mm-hmm.
You're overwhelmed by them.
Yes. Okay. So let's add a little bit of red to our sun. We're now on our very last step here, and this is where we're just trying to tighten some things up. I'm going to make, let's get a fresh yellow here. I'm going to make like an orange and kind of add that to the edges of some of my sunlight here. Maybe take that same. I mean, like, he used oil for this, so we're not going to have the same kind of vibrancy. But I like to do kind of a red over the Neocolor and then lift out so we can see some of that yellow again. Yeah. Let's see what happens if we just grab some of the red here. Okay. That feels good. Let's do a few more here. And that's still pretty damp. Let's see, I'm going to take my round 2 and my space blue, and we can start putting in some of the shapes again. Now, because it's wet, it's going to diffuse out, but I'm actually okay with that because this is the background anyway. It's fuzzy. So like sometimes painting areas that you want to be kind of out of focus, you're not entirely sure what's going on, hints and shapes and things like that. Painting on a wet area will just create that like fuzzy out of focus look already. It really helps with creating like depth and space within a painting. And if you want to use your Neocolor, you can. Now notice that because we added another layer, the turquoise doesn't show up as easy or obviously, I guess, on it, but that's okay. That's some of that smoke. Nope. Sales?
It's could be either. Nah, definitely sales.
Yeah, I think it's sales.
I really love the electric blue with the like dark blue combination. It's so
Yeah.
cool looking.
Let your brush get that dry texture just to add some texture on this. Okay.
It's beautiful. I'm not kidding. I like it better than Monet's.
I think that I guess I just want to say I love this style of painting because it gives you more freedom. And I challenge you guys to look at some of the paintings that you have. If you don't feel comfortable playing air painting, that's okay. If you don't want to go outside and paint right then, um, you don't have to. But think about, how can you take a landscape that you've been wanting to paint and break it down into color transitions with some, a few detail lines and some details in the foreground? How can you capture that moment of feeling with a painting? And it's just such an excellent exercise. I think it gives you so much freedom in terms of color choices and brushstroke. And also, I just am so happy that there were people brave enough to try something new and to go against the current and say, I actually want to try this. And I think it's when we are courageous like that and just kind of do what we think is like, follow our curiosity, you can discover amazing things. Um, and it's fun. And that's what art's all about. I mean, who cares if you ever end up in a museum or your, daughter holds on to your painting for 50 years? I don't care about that. I care about discovering something interesting and looking at the world around me in a different way and having a vibrant life that's full of experiences, but that includes fear. And that's okay. That's part of it. So, thank you so much for painting with me and learning about Monet and Impressionism. I really hope that it sparks an interest in you where you can look at other artists and art history and say, how did we get here? It's fascinating. And I hope that you feel a little bit more courageous to be messy and loose with your painting and see how that goes. And maybe that fits your style. If you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. We will see you guys next time. Bye.